Good morning. Welcome again to Morning Devotions. Thank you for our time together. We're getting back into the book of Acts this weekend as we pick up. Paul said, I've been called to preach the gospel, not with words of men's wisdom, lest the cross be emptied of its power. It's a fun study. But right now, I want us to come back to the book of Acts chapter 21. Sometimes you and I think that Christians in the first century were perfect, but they were far from it. Have you ever asked yourself the question, why did the church of Jerusalem, the place where it all began, why did that church cease to exist? Why did the center of Christianity move first from Jerusalem to Antioch with the great missions-giving church there, and then from Antioch, really out of the Middle East? The center of Christianity moved to Ephesus. Even historians tell us that Mary, the mother of Jesus, and the Apostle John, at the end of their lives, moved to the church of Ephesus. Why did Christianity move from what we call today the Holy Land? What happened? What happened to Christianity in Jerusalem? Remember when we were talking from Acts chapter 15, how there was a group of people that went down to Antioch and began, we call them the Judaizers. They said that, salvation by grace is not enough. You have to be circumcised, you have to become a proselyte Jew, you have to obey all the law of Moses, you have to be devoted to the law, and then you can be saved. Well, the early apostles stood against it. Now later, as we get to Acts 21, 30 plus years later, the apostles have all left Jerusalem. They've scattered to the world to preach the gospel. Second generation Christians are now leading the church in Jerusalem with James, the brother of Jesus, as the pastor. Now James was a great man. He's called James the Just. But James never took a stand for salvation by grace. And I want you to notice how James describes the believers in Jerusalem to Paul. In Acts chapter 21, verse 20, after hearing this, they praised God, and they said, "You know, dear brother, how many thousands of Jews have also believed, and they all follow the law of Moses very seriously." Another translation says, they are all devoted to the law. Now, wait a minute. They weren't devoted to Jesus. They were devoted to the Mosaic law. Now, when you begin to read Galatians and you begin to read Romans, you begin to see the challenge that Paul was up against theologically, challenging people for salvation by grace, salvation by faith in Jesus Christ. Abraham believed and it was credited to him as righteousness. What happened in the church of Jerusalem is that the culture of Judaism, the religious culture, overwhelmed the doctrines of salvation by grace, salvation by faith. The religious culture overwhelmed it to the point that people considered if you're a real Christian, you believe in the law of Moses. If you're a real Christian, you become a proselyte Jew. If you're a real Christian, you follow the law of Moses. And you look at the end of it all, and the church there ceased to exist. It was reabsorbed by Judaism. You were just considered a zealous Jew. Now, brothers and sisters, nothing against the Jewish people, nothing against the Jewish faith. But Jesus came to fulfill the law. Jesus didn't come to say, you got to do this. Jesus came to fulfill the law. Paul's very clear that we're not saved by obedience to the law. The law can't make anyone righteous. Now, I want to challenge you today. Maybe you have gotten born again, and you've grown up in a very religious environment, whatever religious environment that is. If you're not careful, that religious environment overwhelms the beautiful truth, we're saved by grace, not by works, lest any man should boast.